Are you a child of divorce? And if you are, did you grow up with a parent after the divorce where they expected you to be loyal to them? Where if you gave love to the other parent, it was a breach of loyalty. It was an act of disloyalty. And perhaps you even got scolded for it, or given a sideways glance, or put down something if you gave any love to the other parent. It was as if this first parent saw it as a zero-sum game. Anything you give to them means you don't love me. Did you experience that growing up? And if so, do you realize that what the parent is fundamentally conveying is their own fear and their own insecurities? That I need to control you and I need to hoard all of your love in order for me to feel like I have worth. That happened to you as a kid? And have you resolved it inside your own heart? Have you gotten the pain out? But worse, are you doing it to your own kids in your divorce? Making them feel they have to be loyal to you? Or worse even still, are you doing it in your own marriage? Maybe it's time to change. Have a kickass. You want to know one thing that really tans my hide? Is when people talk about this victim mentality. You can't have a victim. Don't be a weakling. Don't be a coward. You got to be tough. Don't have a victim mentality. I had a kid come to me recently, like fucking 18 years old. And he said, Sven, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me. But I don't have a victim mentality. I don't want to have a victim mentality. And I said, kid, can I ask you one question? He said, yeah, what? I said, if a group of people has power, or a person has power over a group of people, over a person, and they exercise that power that they have over this person, over this group, if they exercise that power and cause harm and cause pain, what do we call that? What do we call this person? And he's like, well, that's like an oppressor or a tyrant. I said, that's right. Or an abuser or a bully. But what do we call this person? He said, I don't know. I said, by definition, textbook definition, we call that person a victim. You, kid, are literally a victim. Whether you like it or not, whether you're going to have the victim mentality or not, you were literally a victim of some really shitty people doing some really fucking horrific shit. You were a victim. Yeah, but I don't want to have a victim mentality. I said, what does that mean? He said, people who go through life just saying, oh, I'm a victim, I'm a victim. I said, you want to know what? What it really means is that it's someone who's been afraid to heal, who hasn't gone into it, or who hasn't fully healed. Maybe they've had the courage, but some pain is so extraordinary that it takes longer. So you saying, oh, you have a victim mentality, you're basically a fucking wuss, fucking toughen up, is so fucking stupid, and especially when you're saying it to yourself because you are denying the pain that you went through. What it really takes so that you're no longer identifying as that victim or going through life feeling sorry for yourself is it takes going into that pain and looking at it and flushing it out and flushing it out and flushing it out until it's gone. So is it possible your notion of victim mentality is actually hamstringing your growth and healing? Have a kick-ass day. I asked a question recently in a radio interview, Sven, what's your superpower? And I thought it's kind of a silly question, but it's a fun one, so I'll play along. And I answered by, I started to give some sort of spiritual, deep answer. Oh, I give energy, or I don't mind apologizing, or I don't mind admitting I'm wrong, shit like that. And then I stopped and I said, yeah, no, you know what it is on a very practical level that is my superpower? It's that I've been poor and you haven't. I have literally lived on the streets for 2.5 years, sleeping on concrete every single night in Oakland, California. I drained my bank account, gave away my life possessions to go and work among, minister to the homeless, and to live among them, sleeping on concrete every single night. And that's a superpower because that is the very experience that a great many people fear the very most, being destitute and all the shame that goes along with it. And I deliberately chose that. Why? It's where my heart was calling me to go. Now I understand those are different circumstances from a lot of people and why a lot of people end up homeless, but there I was. And the result of that is I'm willing to take risks that most people aren't. I'm willing to live life on the edge in ways that other people aren't. I don't mean physical risk. That's never been my thing. I mean in terms of just living passionately and following my own heart. But the interesting thing is that's the very mentality that brought me to being homeless. I just felt called to do it. And yet, the grand irony is that that mentality of living boldly and taking risks and just following my own voice at the expense of whatever it might cost me, relationships, friendships, etc., pride cost me that decades ago, is that since that time, I've had success and some fame and some wealth and so forth come into my life. And that'll really challenge you. That'll really challenge you. One of the challenges of success and so forth is that you hold on to it. You begin to cling to it. And as a result, you begin to curb your message. And your message is simply who you are, who I am. It's like, oh, this experience feels good. What those things, the success, the fame, the wealth, whatever, what that brings me is the ability to have experiences, adventures that I wasn't having before. It's like, oh shit, I fucking love this. And you want to hold on tightly. You don't want to let go. But the effect of that then is you stop being the very person that you were before. And the person that I was before is I played loose. I played life loose. In sports, we talk about playing loose versus playing tight. And you want to play loose. You do, because then you're in flow, right? But when you're wanting to hold on to what you have versus who you were and what you were doing with your life and living your truth, when you want to hold on to the haves, you begin to choke off from the very thing that brought you there. And so in my own personal spiritual disciplines, I have to forever keep opening my hand, keep letting go of the very things that I'm now enjoying very much. I have to remember that at the essence of who I am, the real exhilaration of life isn't the having. It's not even all the experiences and adventures that can bring me. The real exhilaration of life for me. This is just for me, man. If this doesn't resonate with you, hey, fuck off, have a kick-ass day. I wish you only the best, all right? And I say that somewhat playfully. I'm not trying to force this shit on you. I'm simply offering it as a new way of thinking. For me, I keep opening my hand because there's the greater joy than anything I could ever have and the experiences it could bring me. The greater joy for me is the exhilaration of just being who the fuck I am. Damn the cost, whatever the cost might be to me, loss of relationships and friendships and so forth. It's living from my center and having the balls to live boldly. If you've never watched the 2007 commencement address by Stephen Jobs at Stanford University, watch it. He just tells 3 stories, and the last one is the best. And he ends with this little phrase that he had picked up in the 60s, and it's simply this: stay hungry, stay foolish. Stay hungry, stay foolish. And you know what? That's a great fucking mantra. The ability to stay hungry and stay foolish for me is driven by the fact that I don't give a shit about the price. To me, I don't give a shit if I'm poor. I don't give a shit if people think I'm fucking stupid. I don't give a shit. And as a result, I get to live that exhilaration. But it forces me to forever open my hand because it's easy to cling tightly to something, even while it's choking off the very thing that brought you there. So where are you in this? What is it you're clinging tightly, and what's the price it's costing you? What aspects of your life is it choking off? And is it possible that what you're clinging tightly to, maybe it's a fucking relationship, maybe it's your children, maybe it's whatever it is you're clinging to is choking off the very life that you used to enjoy, or the very life and fullness and aliveness you've been seeking your entire life because you're clinging to something. And clinging is driven by fear of losing something, or fear of having an experience, convinced that if I have that experience, I won't survive. It'll be a fate worse than death. What are you clinging to? What's the fear that's driving the clinging? And what aspect of aliveness are you cutting off as a result?
Simple question for you today. In the home in which you grew up and or in your present home, who is the primary power source? Who has the most power? See, in most homes I've seen in over 30 years of counseling, it's a mother or a father. Sometimes both, but yeah, and there can be power sharing, but usually somebody tips the balance. Who has the primary power in your home? Again, could be mother or father, but I've seen it where a grandparent is primary power source, or an aunt or an uncle whom you live with, or I've even seen it where an 11-year-old girl is the primary power source, has the most power. And what's interesting, what does that really even mean, that someone has power? It means that fundamentally they have the ability to exercise their will over other people, and the other people allow it. But what that also means, very often what happens is if there's a primary power source and that power is not being wielded with generosity and with graciousness and so forth, is that there usually ends up being a family victim. Maybe many victims, but usually there's one in particular, the family villain, who becomes the butt of the primary power source. And that they create story, or they use that person as sort of the shit stick of the family, right? Were you the family villain? Were you the one that the primary power source shit on? And again, there may be many, but very often there's one above all else. Not the only, but the main one. And what's interesting about that is the reason that the family primary power source will do that is to keep the focus off me and my problems. I'll exercise my power, and that power can come in many forms. Financial, fucking fear of that person's tongue and all the things they can say with their words, or Torsten, come on, come back, or sorry, it's one of our dogs. There are so many different fucking ways that power can be exercised, or physical power, right? Who was the primary power source? Were you the fucking villain? But there's a third piece, and this is the really nasty, ugly piece. In order for one person to be the primary power source and one to be a villain, everyone else has to buy into the story. In other words, there have to be other people that are complicit. And if there's more than one adult in the home, that means there are adults who are in your past who are complicit in allowing the primary power source to hurt you. Because why would someone be complicit in allowing a child to be hurt? Because they fear something. They fear losing something. They fear being the focus of the primary power sources, the tyrant's wrath. So they're protecting themselves at the expense of you, at the expense of the child. So the fundamental question becomes, who is the primary power source? Who is the villain? Who is the bad guy? Who is the shit stick? And who are those who are complicit? And you want to know what fucking feelings you have buried down deep inside you? Not only that story that the primary power source taught you about yourself and that you've been spending your life running from, or say spending your life creating a fuck you to that primary power source. Maybe it was a fuck you in the form of success. Maybe it was a fuck you in the form of checking out, or whatever it might be. Who was the primary power source? And worse still, what did they teach you about yourself? And just as bad, who were the people that let it happen? Have a kick-ass.
The single biggest killers of lives, relationships, and dreams is the need to control, and how control plays into relationships with other people, but also relationship with self. And it can be a relationship, let's say, to begin with, a relationship with a child, a relationship with a lover, a relationship with a subordinate, in a work relationship, that I need to control you, because the reason we do it in life is because if you're not doing what I want you to do, my anxieties, my fears rise up inside of me, and I can't handle the anxiety and the stress inside. So I need to control you as a way to assuage my anxieties, my fear. Control is always driven by the fears that rise up in me. The need to control external circumstances as a way to reduce internal fear, internal anxiety. But the problem with that is it chokes the other person, and it fundamentally conveys to the other person, I own your life. You exist to serve my inner needs, my inner fears and anxieties. And that really corrupts relationships, because that person doesn't exist to assuage your own inner fears. They exist to live their lives. And so the problem isn't the other person. The problem is me and my own fears, and thus the solution to the situation is for me to go into those fears, find the origins of them, and get those fears out so that I'm not trying to control external circumstances. And the need for control will kill dreams, because we have a vision of what we want our career, what we want our life, what we want our dream to look like, and we hold on to that, and we hold on to it so tightly, and we control it, and if it's not just the way I want it, fuck. But the problem is we don't allow for life, for the universe to breathe new life into that, to bring unexpected aspects that are even better than what we imagine. So we control and we hold on too tightly, and we squeeze the life out of it. The opposite side of it in relationships is people will allow themselves to be controlled because of their own fears. My fear that if I actually put out there what I really want and what I'm feeling and how you're stifling me, or I hate when you treat me this way, or say who I really am and what I really want and speak my truth, I'll get hammered, I'll get assailed. And so they keep their voice inside, so they allow themselves to be controlled because they're afraid of putting their truth out there. So how is fear and the desire to control or be controlled corrupting your life, corrupting your dreams, and absolutely stealing the joy out of your relationships?
I have a long email from a buddy of mine who's really broken up, old friend of mine. He went through a breakup recently, and he's like, Sven, I thought we fucking loved each other. I had fucking adored her, and she fawned over me, and it was just like, it was a great fucking relationship. But she wanted to break it up. And I'm like, why? What happened? We went through the whole thing, and what we discovered was that the chemistry was great, and they really loved each other, and she adored him, etc., etc. But the problem was, he's at a place in life where he wants to just move things along. He wants to move forward faster. He wants to get to marriage. He wants to have kids. And she's at a place in life where she wants to slow walk it. And he's always saying to her, sort of coaxing her along, come on, go faster. And she's always saying to him, why do you want to go so fast? And it's very easy for people around him or her friends or whatever to say, what's his problem? Why is he rushing things? Or for people who understand or are sympathetic to him to say, what's her problem? Why is she dragging her feet? But the point is this. There is no inherently right speed. There's no one speed that is always right. The point is, what is your speed? If you're being totally honest, what is the speed you want to go? What's your velocity? Where are you at in your life now? I know where I'm at in my life at almost 55 years old is very different speed-wise in a relationship from where I was at 25. or even 40. And it's not even a function of age, it's just who you are. So one of the things you need to be looking for in your present relationship or in your future relationships is, where am I at? What is my speed? And what is the speed that this one person wants to go? Because if I'm a person who wants to go fast and I'm with someone who wants to go slow, there are going to be problems. There's going to be friction, even though we get along on so many other things and love each other and so forth. That if somebody just doesn't want to go slow, or if somebody just doesn't want to go fast, or maybe it's a middle person, a person who's open to going faster, open to going slower, but they're just going to take it and see how it goes. There's no one right speed, but does your speed sync up with the person you're with? And what ultimately is your speed? Have a kick-ass
So you got
day.
2 kids, roughly 8 or 9 years old in 3rd grade. And little 3rd grade Billy calls little 3rd grade Derek dummy. When he does that, does little Billy know he's hurting Derek? Of course, the answer is, of course he does. Because in 3rd grade, anybody knows that dummy is an insult. In fact, implicit in even using the word is the desire to hurt the other person, to insult them. And what's so fascinating about that is that I will get clients who admit all manner of shit that their parents called them or said to them when they were children, or even as an adult, even as recently as last Thanksgiving, let's say, that the parent called them things like stupid, loser, fucking turd, total screw up, fat, stupid, whatever it might be. And yet the adult child in 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s can't bring themselves to answer the question in the affirmative when I say, did your parent know they were hurting you? They'll very often say, no, dad didn't know he was hurting me, because they still want a relationship with dad today. Or mom didn't know. No, I'm sure she didn't intend to. Wait a minute, but you just told me a 3rd grader knows that using a bad word like that against someone is going to hurt them, and yet you swear your mother didn't intend to? That doesn't even make sense. You know damn well she intended to. And then I'll ask the question, did she ever apologize, or did he ever apologize? And they'll say, no, not unless I totally backed them in a corner, which I never had the courage to do, because, dad would fly into a fit of rage, or mom was always angry, or whatever it was. And I was terrified of them. And so they don't want to admit that the parent had intent to do harm. Why? Because admitting that admits seeing that you have an adult intending to harm a child. And when you have that realization, holy shit, I never really had a mother to begin with. And when you still want a relationship with your adult parent as an adult, you don't want to see the truth. So what truth are you avoiding, or worse, are you the one inflicting the damage? Have a kick-ass. One of the single biggest mistakes I see people make when divorcing, when they have kids, after the divorce, they have so much pain inside of themselves, or so much anger, and they're so looking for love and wanting to feel good themselves, is that they find a new lover. And that can be a good thing, but then they invest themselves in the new lover, and maybe the new lover's kids, and their own kids get neglected. Or maybe they adopt more kids of their own because they've got so much pain, they need something to distract them, and nothing creates more chaos and distraction like more kids. Or maybe they start a new career, or maybe they restart their education, and as a result, they've got something to invest themselves at the expense of their own fucking children. And what happens is so much fucking pain builds up inside their own children, because now they're being neglected, or now they're feeling like they're playing second fiddle to your new lover's kids. So who fucking neglected you? Who made something else more important than you when you were a kid? Or who the fuck are you doing it to now? Are you hurting your own kids because you're walking away from them to make yourself feel good? Have a kick-ass day.